So it's my real pleasure today to introduce an old friend, Jelena Sivulka. And the subject here, caring for our souls. Over the years of ministry, we've all witnessed strong leaders whose souls have gone untended. Anxiety, burnout, depression, and anger are some of the symptoms of a neglected soul. How can we help a hurting soul? What are some of the practical steps to help our streams of life stay clean, alive, and healthy? Only a well rested, well cared for soul has the capacity to empathize and understand profoundly, to ask questions, and not simply go through the motions of faith. Jelena Sivulka was born and raised in Serbia, where she got her master's degree in psychology and in theology. And she became a Christian 25 years ago, and a few years later got involved in ministry with her husband, Greg, planting churches, distributing humanitarian aid, and partnering with Johnny and friends, serving people with disabilities. Jelena has also worked as a counselor in Serbia's schools and a social worker, and she's currently serving as a therapist in a medical clinic. She's the founder and director of the non-profit organization Hannah's Hope, and she's been blessed with 3 children, Benjamin, Sarah, and Hannah, who has autism. So, Jelena, it's a delight to have you here again, and over to you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Peter. It is always a joy and honor. I'm Jelena Sivulka, and actually, I've been a believer almost 30 years. So that's a little bit, I'm sorry I didn't change that number there for 25 years. That's probably the badge I want to, with honor, carry. Uh, Growing up in Serbia, it's always been a challenge. So Serbia has been really challenging country because I stayed always in the same city, but I was born in one country. I got married in a second one. I had a first child in a third, a second child in a fourth country, and a third child in a fifth country. Never leaving the same city. Only in Serbia can something like that happen. Anyways, I've been in a ministry for almost 3 decades, and sadly, this topic came because I think I pretty much underestimated the importance of taking care for my soul in a ministry and in work. So both my husband and I went through a burnout. We went through hardships in a ministry and with a family. As Peter mentioned, I have 3 kids. Benjamin is 25, Sarah is 21, and Hannah, the youngest one with autism, is 16. So I had an opportunity and honor to sit very often across from great leaders, great people in a ministry, and seeing how sadly the state of their soul got ruined. And it's kind of like a beautiful spring that was just cluttered with plastic and trash, with all the anxiety and pornography, with too much work and so little time to do the right thing. So, as it was mentioned in the introduction, only a restful soul has a capacity for empathy, for understanding and growth. In 30 minutes, I think you're all aware. I don't have not even close enough time to talk on this topic. I'm just probably gonna scratch the surface, probably put a pebble in your shoe, and you're gonna start walking in the right direction and start asking the good questions and hopefully slow down. Sometimes when somebody is very busy and needs to make decision, very often I just say something very simple. What they need to do is just slow down, put your car in a lower gear, wash the windshield, and then slowly you can make a decision if you're going to turn left or right. We don't make any decision while the car is in a full speed. But the caring for the soul, it has been the business of the church for centuries. And the church, in the church history, did an amazing job taking care and just doing the curing, and the because that word, the soul care, comes from the Qurani Marum, that is actually 2 words: to care and to cure. To care is to support, to cure is to restore. Very often today we have friendships that are going to help us and give us support, but the cure is going to come from psychotherapy or a psychiatrist. I am psychotherapist, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm just saying that sometimes if we just focus on that, we are still staying and being empty. What has the church and the believers done through their church history? They were in a business of healing, overcoming the impairment of someone's soul, sustaining, helping somebody endure and transcend, reconciling, helping the broken, and guiding, helping somebody make good decisions. So, how are we doing there, and how are we doing today in our churches in taking care of our fellow soldiers, our believers, and helping them in the state of their soul? It is really not just the business of one, it is not the business of the professionals, it is not the business of the doctors, it is the business of everyone who calls himself the follower of Christ. To take care of each other burdens, to be there for each other, to recognize the importance of soul, and to take care of our own soul and the soul of others. God's transforming presence is the foundation for spiritual soul care. And I'm going to be, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to be repeating myself zillion times. His presence is the foundation for spiritual soul care. I will mention a few things. I will mention helpful things. Hopefully I'll help you. I'm not going to mention all. I'm not going to mention everything, but I think remembering that his presence, it is the foundation of the caring for our soul, that we're going to remember that amazing thing that he told Martha, that Mary chose better. So hopefully we're going to remember that better is being his disciple, being by his feet, and being in his presence. So the mystery of the soul, and actually let me share my screen. Okay, so what is to care? It is Korani Marm, to care and to cure. And what is that? I spoke on that a little bit. What is soul, and how am I gonna, and I'm gonna go quickly through these slides. So please, I'm sorry, it is 30 minutes, and now it's actually even less than 30 minutes. So it is gonna be really fast. I'm sorry, let me just look at my clock. So the Yale psychiatrist said that very often how we perceive the soul and what is soul is like a cartoon character. It's just something, you know, that it is, you know, he calls it the Looney Tunes theory of the soul, that is just part of us that just kind of vanishes, as you can see over there in this little cartoon, that just goes up to heaven. What is the soul? The 21 grams is just a very poorly based theory that the soul, the 7 tuberculosis victims were 21 grams lighter when they died, so they believed that actually the soul carries, and it's actually the 21 grams. It's, you know, the title of a good movie, but I mean, so and so movie, but it's not true, of course. SOS stands for Save Our Souls. What is, I'm gonna go, let me see, okay, there. So I'm gonna actually use the what Dallas Willard talks about the soul, and actually kind of his definition, that soul is the capacity, the, the soul is what integrates your intentions, your mind, your thoughts and feelings, your values and conscience in your body. So here you go, there's like a bigger picture. The soul kind of keeps all of that together, the glue that keeps every part of us together. Very often the soul, when I'm talking about soul, I'm not talking about self. So please know the difference. The self is, as Martin Seligman says, a brilliant psychologist, we are so busy concerning about the self. Ironically, the more we obsessed with with us and with ourselves, the more we neglect our souls. And it was John, let me just, I'm kind of having a hard time looking at this. Okay, it was John Ardberg in his book, The Soul Care, that says that today we care more about the conditions of our car than conditions of our soul. Sadly, so here's that comment that Martin Seligman, a great psychologist that is not even a believer, said that we have replaced church faith and community with a tiny little unit that cannot bear the weight of meaning, and that is self. Replacing that, we have replaced our relationship with God with ministry, church, and humanitarian work, social justice, with all great things, and we are suffering, and our soul is being thirsty and it's being hungry. They're great books, and I'm going to be talking in mentioning different books, so you can also find them. This is about on Pablo Martinez books on Take Care of Yourself. So how to know that our soul is not well. And Pablo Martinez mentions in this very, very helpful booklet is irritability and impatience. That's unusual reactions, the physical symptoms, sleep problems, slower mind. If you cannot focus, if you're very forgetful, well, that could be dementia, but that could also be just stress and just caring more than we can handle. And he says that his burden is easy and his yoke is light. If something in your life is, if your life in your ministry is not light and it's not easy, you're doing something wrong. Low energy, fatigue, and lack of motivation, distorted thoughts, pessimism, hopelessness, cynicism. Those are all the little signs that we are doing something wrong. And it's a very important to recognize, it's really important to ask the question, where am I? What is happening with me? I mean, just listening to this, it could be that you're already asking that question. I love how actually in the story of the manna that was given for manna, the food giving every day, it says that he gave exactly just the amount that we need for that day. So it doesn't matter how much the people gathered, they just got how much they needed for one day. And it was very, very clearly instructed that they should eat that and not keep it for the next day, except for the Sabbath. So when they tried, and it says that some of them tried to keep for the next day, what were they taking it from? From what amount? Because it says that they just got just the right amount that they needed. So they were robbing themselves from what was needed today. When we worry, when we stress, when we carry more than we can carry, we are robbing ourselves from today. If we are not, there's just the right amount of time, there is just a right amount of energy, and we all have a different energy that we can work with. And I'm going to talk about that later on. Some of us are dealing with chronic illness and with different things, so it is God gave us exactly the right amount. So how are you disturbing the mana that he is giving you? So, what are the enemies? It is very important to ask the first question: where am I, and what state am I right now? And before we go, what is good for our souls, let's talk about is not good. And what I'm saying here, of course, nothing's new. You know that sin is wrong, lions wrong, idols are wrong. But why am I mentioning this? Because it is really, again, bringing the mirror and showing where we make the same mistakes, and for some reason we fall in the same trap. It is the sin, not doing what is right. He can do the ministry. It says in Acts 17:25 that God doesn't need human hands for the ministry. And why is it so overwhelming? And somehow we think that we're indispensable, that we are so important that he cannot do it without us. He can. And he wants us, he wants our relationship by his grace and mercy. He wants us to get the best seat. And that is actually, I actually think that ministry is having VIP seats to what God is doing. We just get to see it very close. It is his work. But when we somehow think that it's our work, when we actually let the little lies and the little ones and the big one get in our lives, and of course, lie is a sin. So why am I putting that differently? Because a lies shape our identity. So it can be a lie that you're not valued. It can be a lie, fed to you since you were a small child, that you're not valued unless you're important or unless you're working hard. So it really shapes our identity. It could be a lie that you're not worthy of his love. It could be a lie there's never going to be anything out of you. It could be any lie that you are so important that he cannot do your work. We are every role that I have in life, somebody else can fulfill, except for being God's child, his own, being belonging to him and being created for his glory. So please recognize the lies that you're being fed and you believe. And the lies shape who we are. I'll have to go very quickly. The search for the idols, nothing on. So lie, not listening to the right voice. Sin is not doing what is right. searching for the idols, not honoring the only one and the only king. Whatever idolatry of the soul, I think I have here, yes, is the sin of the soul, meeting its needs with anything that distances from God. In a moment, I have put something on a pedestal higher than God, that something is my God. And shepherding yourself, probably the saddest part of the Bible, it is when the shepherds, the shepherd themselves, they're like a tree, they're never going to bear fruit, they're like clouds, they're never going to bring rain. Shepherding yourself, when it is about you, it is the sin. A very helpful book said Seven Deadly Sins of Women in Leadership. Again, Kate Coleman talks about limiting self-perception, failure to draw the line, and so forth. So I'm not going to go, but if you get that one, it will be very helpful. So what is it that we should do, and what is really important? It is to see what we are doing, what we are doing in his name, to see what we are doing wrong and stopping. We cannot do the work of Redeemer unless he first does his redemptive work in us. I love this part in First King 19:5, when the angel, when Elijah is broken and lost and confused after amazing things that happen, dealing probably with depression and suicidal depression. This is what the angel tells him: get up and eat. It is not the amazing thing what he can do and conquer and finish and do. Later on, he's going to get more instructions than that. The first one, when we're overwhelmed, when we are shattered, when we're broken, when we are done, I love this. Get up and eat. It is that simple. So sometimes we forget the very simple thing. And when somebody comes to me in the office for counseling, one of the first thing I said, just think that every part of you is sitting at the table. There's your body, there's your soul, there's your social being, your intellectual being, there's your emotional being. Every part of you is actually kind of soul, is all of that. Kind of the soul is the table, let's just say. So we are all sitting there and having the meeting, the family meeting, and something's going wrong. The part of yourself that you neglect, that doesn't have the right to say anything, is certainly going to lead the meeting. So if you're neglecting the state of your body, you are not going to be able to function. So it is, every part is important. And it's very interesting that God is choosing our body to be the temple. And how are you taking care of that temple? He is going to dwell in us. So how are you taking care of that? So it is very simple what the angel is telling Elijah, but it's very profound. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, there is no time to talk about, are you having quiet time? You cannot focus, you cannot think, you cannot be there. So every part of you is very important and has a very important role. So what can we do? If you're tired from running a foot race, how will you race against horses in Jeremiah 12:5? Amazing book. Again, I have not, it could be that I have it here. It's Running with the Horses, Eugene Peterson. If you have not read it, please do. But I love that somewhere in the beginning of his ministry, Jeremiah's ministry, Jeremiah is exhausted and tired. And it's very interesting what God is telling him. If you're tired from running a foot race, everybody around you is walking and you are running and you're tired, how will you race against horses? I mean, who can even race against horses? Which one of us can be in a ministry and serve and give without Christ? We're going to be exhausted, but in a ministry, we cannot do it without him. So why are we get tired from running a foot race? And what God is telling Jeremiah, and I have for you a race with horses. How are you going to race against them when you're just giving up here? And let's talk what we can do. And actually, it's not really what we can do. There are things what we can do, but certainly what he has done and what he's doing and what he wants to do for us. So let's start that with this beautiful word, hineni. Hineni, here I am. It's mentioned 8 to 9 times maybe in the Bible. So sorry if I'm wrong, but it's at every single time, except from once, is mentioned in here I am, is in the twice is Abraham. Abraham telling God, here I am, when God is calling him. Here I am is more than here I am. Here I am. I'm here completely ready to do what you want me to do. Just consider it done. I have already done. I'm done. I'm there. You have me. I'm on your team. I'm gonna do whatever you need me to do. So it's not just like, okay, here I am. What do you want me to do? It's already consider it done. You have me. So majority of the times it is actually few people in a Bible that says, here I am, Hineni. What is very important in Isaiah 58:9. And let me read that part. It says, when you call, the Lord will answer. Yes, I am here. He would quickly reply. God is telling us, I am completely ready. Consider it done. Isn't that amazing? So, if you are exhausted, tired, if you're questioning where you're going, what a great place to be. What a great place to stop and actually stop and talk to him. Jay Stringer, a good book, Sexual Brokenness. He talks to move away from loneliness, frustration, futility, and boredom towards beauty, wholeness, and creativity. Let's get closer to him. Self-care includes everything: music and art, and healthy food, and avoidance of too much alcohol and caffeine, regular exercise, time in nature, time away from work. It's actually a great friend of ours, Richard Winter, that wrote that. But it's there is so much there. But and I think a lot of us know that. Somehow we are really good, kind of a passenger drivers, but not a good drivers. So we neglect the state of the car that we are driving to the point that we are exhausted. We don't even know if we want to turn, if we want to keep driving, if we would just want to give up, if we want to just crash. And what do we do? Again, one more beautiful verse. Stand at the crossroads and look. As for the ancient paths, ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Whatever I tell you, it is really nothing you have not heard. So let me be the one that is going to remind you of the truth that you have heard. We cannot do the work of the Redeemer unless he first does his redemptive work in us. So the question is, how does his redemptive work looks in us? One more, and I'm going to probably stop with mentioning other books. Really helpful book and is Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership, Hallie Barton. And it's she talks, and I love this painting. She doesn't talk about the painting, but she actually kind of compares the ministry and the story of Moses. So lessons on leadership from Moses. And some of them are, I didn't write all the lessons that she talks, and some of them I did mention here, some of them I didn't. But it's knowing yourself, because very often it could be our character that God shaped and built so that it can be used for his glory. But it can push us, like it did push Moses, to kill an Egyptian. It was his character, his irritability, his lack of patience, his willingness to quickly finish and do something, that he did it all wrong. So how often do we do things wrong because of our character? So it's very important to know yourself, to know your God, to practice the practice of paying attention, and to practice the rhythm of in life of a leader, the rest and the giving and the serving, and also to leadership is intercession, as I mentioned. A beautiful painting. And why I love about this painting, because for them, Israel to win the battle, the God can win like this. And it's so important that God chose to take Israel through the desert, because he said if they would go a quicker way, 40 days through the land of Philistines, he thought that they're going to give up because of the battles. Well, he chose to take them on a path of 40 days, and the first thing that they're facing is a battle. They're winning the battle, as you know the story, why this great people, it is her and Aaron are holding the hands of Moses, and the battle is being won. And very often, this is who we are, old and exhausted, unless somebody's there to help us. And in that way, God is doing his work. and using us for his glory. Also, very important in our ministry to have somebody beside us, but also it's important to have somebody ahead of us and somebody behind us. Somebody ahead that we can listen to their good advice, that already walked the path that we're walking. Somebody beside us to hold our hands when the battle is very intense and we are overwhelmed. Somebody behind us that we're going to mentor and they're going to be there, that we're going to help them share. It is really good. God is most glorified in us when we're most satisfied in him. Let's not remember, it's John Piper that constantly repeats, let's not forget that it's his work. It is his work, it's his calling, it is for his glory. So, what can we do? And let me just check the time again. What can we do to not neglect, to take care of our soul? Ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. It was Dallas Willard for John Orberg, the advice that he gave him. So, as I said very often to the people in my office, slow down. Find a way to slow down in your life. So, wash the windshield, turn into smaller gear so that you will know what are the right decisions that you have to make. Do not make decisions while you're driving really fast and while your windshield is all dirty until you see it clearly where you're going. And that's where the time to make decisions. Because in a hurry is the one that makes decisions and usually wrong ones. Hurry lies and robs us. And actually, I believe that God gives us all the anchors because he loves us. Pain and suffering are soul building in our life, but they can very often be the anchors that makes the boat stop. So that could be chronic illness, that could be finances, that could be a country where you're living or a passport that you're holding, or that could be COVID, whatever it is really, I mean, God is above all of that. And why is he making it? Why is he doing it? Why is he allowing? However, you want in your theology to see that, he is above all of that. He can heal my daughter with autism. Oh, I believe that he's a powerful God, that autism is not above his pay grade. That he cannot cover, take care of it. He's choosing not to. And very often, that autism, that is a horrible thing, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but he is using something so horrible that I need to be very often at home, taking care of Hannah, realizing that I love being at home and I love being in his word, studying his word, spending time with Jesus, because I'm stuck taking care of 16-year-old daughter. Very often, pain and suffering does that, reminds us where we are, reminds us what were the things that we put on pedestal that is not Jesus, and that's why it's hurting us so much. It could very often be that is the thing that is ripping our soul that is actually shaping and making our soul even wider and more beautiful. Art can be the language of the soul that we can use. So find the ways that you can write your own psalms, you can listen to the music, listen to Bach, that you can just find the joy in nature, that you can see him in the things around you. We do flourish and heal in healthy surrounding. What is around you? Who do you surround yourself with? The goal of our life and ministry is to fulfill God's will, not to satisfy people's demands. It's Pablo Martinez that said, not Jelena. But how important it is to recognize, why am I doing what I'm doing? Who am I pleasing? Why am I not slowing down? And as David Benner said once, every time I dare to meet God in the vulnerability of my sin and shame, this knowing is strengthened. Every time I fall back into a self-improvement mode and try to bring God my best self, it is weakened. I only know divine, unconditional, radical, and reckless love for me when I dare to approach God just as I am. And I encourage you to come just as you are. It was John Calvin that said, knowing yourself begins with knowing God. We have to be reminded again that we are deeply loved and deeply sinful. As Paul says, I am the biggest sinner. He didn't do he didn't do the survey finding who is the biggest sinner. But I think when we come in God's presence, we know exactly who we are. When we come in his presence, we know, and when we know who he is, how redeemed and restored we are, and how deeply we are. Our identity does not come from our activities, but from belonging and from who he is. And what are we created? And when does our soul flourish? We are created to be glorified. We are created to suffer. If his son learned the obedience, Hebrew 4, through suffering, why do we think that this life, that we are not going to go through pain and suffering? We are created to suffer, to share in his suffering, and we are on a journey to surrender. I love in Psalm 63:8, I cling to you and your right hand upholds me. And the clinging, when I did the most, it is actually very often with Hannah. So let me tell you just right before I finish a little bit about Hannah. Hannah is 16-year-old sweet girl with a severe autism. She can understand English and Serbian, but very often she chooses not to talk. And it took me a while. I was already a believer. We were already in a ministry when Hannah was diagnosed with a severe autism. And there were quite a lot of lessons that God used this little girl that could not talk to teach me. Well, I was preparing a few years ago for the first time that I shared on this topic. I remember I was fighting it in the morning and asking God, what is there that you want me to share? What is there that you want me to say? What is there that, how do you want to take care of our souls? How does that look? Okay, so we know things, the books are written, there are amazing things said, but what is it? And the whole time Hannah's bugging me, and she loves water, and she wanted a shower, she wanted a bath actually. So she's constantly bugging and coming and says, well, I want to take a shower, I want to take a shower. And I'm like, Hannah, please, Mama's busy, I'm really doing a really important thing. I'm trying to listen to God and get ready for this. And she is just there. Finally said, okay, that's it, let's go and take a bath. She's severely autistic. There are a lot of things she can do, but she needs help with everything. I need to, get the water ready, help her undressed, help her wash herself, wash her hair, dry her body. I have to dress her. I have to help her know that she should not go outside if it's too cold, what she should wear, help her prepare the meal. Actually, she cannot. I'm preparing the meal. And I'm there, and it's taking a while. And I actually really believe God telling me, let me do that for you. The way you take care of her, let me wash you. And when he told me that, let me wash you, let me feed you, let me protect you, let me now word this differently. Every one of you that are listening to me right now, just think of this and let him wash you. Let him feed you. Let him protect you. Let him dress you and prepare you for the day. Let him fill your heart with joy. Let him honor you. Let him be in you so that you can be who you are, completely and totally his, dependent on him. So as I tell you, Hannah's been amazing, amazing companion that God brought in my life to help me learn, grow, enjoy God's presence, and let him take care of my soul the way I'm taking care of her, and much, much, much better. So thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jelena. We've been listening to Jelena Sivulka on caring for our souls. So, Jelena, let's move to the questions. And the first one has a number of votes from Hedwin Cadrianto. Hedwin is actually one of our field workers based in Java. And he said, this is really a question about the right kind of relaxation, I guess. You've talked about the importance of art, music, the appreciation of nature. But the question is, many Christians are fans of football matches, Netflix movies, various social media, Korean dramas. This is from Southeast Asia, you're hearing this. Smartphone, computer games, other kinds of hobbies and so on. What's your opinion of enjoying these entertainments as part of self-care? Are these things okay and helpful, or can they turn out to be idols? And so this This is a big question. Are there some things that we can do which are not helpful for our souls in terms of the establishing the rhythm of life between work and rest?
Uh, oh my gosh. Well, I am certainly the fan of a lot of things that you like, a good book and Netflix, a glass of good wine. But can that be an idol and can that be a problem? Yes. I mean, it doesn't have to be itself, but it could be. If I'm driving home from work and looking forward to have a glass of wine and watch a movie, and that is my go-to constantly, then it could be that could be my idol if I think I cannot go without that. If that is something that preoccupies my mind, if that is something that I'll rather do than spend time with Jesus, and if that is something that is really the highlight of my day, then I mean it's kind of like a fasting from good food. I love that he's waiting for us with aged wine and good meal, and I can't wait to get to that. But if that is all I'm looking forward to, we have missed the point if it's not his presence. So I'm not saying that I mean, a lot of good things can end up being bad things. The ministry is an amazing thing, an amazing honor. But I think it can be completely wrong and can be an idol if that subsidizes who he is and what he called us to do. So this is kind of silly, but let me just very often in a counseling, I ask people, what have you done when you were 12 years old? I mean, now that's a wrong question, for millenniums. Well, what they were doing, they were still on the phones. For us, they're in our 40s or 50s or 60s. There were no phones. So what were you doing when you were 12? When you were without, that pressure the world was telling you to do? How did you spend your time? What did you enjoy doing? And I enjoy being with friends, being outside, reading books. And that is kind of like, you know, recognizing the child in you and giving the freedom the child in you to enjoy the rest, to replenish the energy, and the strength without, going and doing, something kind of indulging yourself wrongly in something. But I don't think anything is wrong with all of that, with a whole list. I mean, it could be depending what they're, if they're not, if they're binging the series and not really, if they're neglecting everything. But there's nothing wrong with that, and it could be wrong with every one of them if he is not the one and the number one.
Great answer. Yeah, so it's all about the Lord being on the throne, and even good things, people, pastimes, professions, and so on. They can all take his place and get us into trouble. So Claudia Stein from Europe is asking, this all makes perfect sense, Jelena, and it's very clear on an intellectual level. But what practical steps can we take, though, to make it happen in our lives? So this is coming from a busy doctor on the front line with huge responsibility and pressure.
Okay, I hope this was not just good on intellectual level, Claudia. I just really hope. But anyhow, what can you do? Stop. So what do I mean? Okay, so here it is. I make, okay, so this is my little like schedule, like what I do when I do. So when I schedule the next week, I scheduled the time for exercise, for walk, to be with Jesus, to be like how we make, if I, the way I schedule my clients, that's the way I schedule the time to rest, the time to be with a friend, the time. And when we slow down and when we stop, if we have the right time, when we give our soul rest in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, we hear ourselves and we hear God better. So I urge every one of us, if you've never been on a weekend and a vacation with Jesus, do it. It doesn't matter if you have not done, start doing it regularly. Have in one day time, walk with him or time with him. In a week, day with him. In a month. And I know we're all busy, but there are ways that he's going to get our attention. I was very busy before autism. I was very busy before a lot of things, and he totally and certainly got my attention. As C.S. Lewis says, in suffering, his voice is a megaphone. We certainly hear it then. So find the way in your rhythm of the day. Find the way that there's going to be, that you're not going to keep mana for tomorrow, that you are just going to enjoy today. Schedule the weekend with Jesus, even if you're married, even if you have kids. Schedule a weekend of solitude, and really stopping and slowing down is probably for me the best advice that somebody gave me.
Now you've talked a lot about hurry and the damaging effects of it. It's been said hurry is the devil himself. What do you think from your experience of of counseling, seeing clients from a whole variety of different backgrounds and under different pressures? What is it that makes people hurry? What's the thinking behind it, and how, if we sense this hurry in ourselves, what's the best way of dealing with it and helping ourselves to be more measured?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think it's topic itself, just what does hurry does and what damage does a hurry do in our life. Because, it's kind of when somebody tells you, okay, you have to make a decision, and it's kind of like impulsive shopping. Okay, this is the quickest way to explain. You have to do it right now, and this is the deal right now, and you have to. The best thing to do there is just say, I'll think about that, and to leave. Because it is really when we think that we're under pressure, we make decisions differently. So I have to do it right now, right here. And okay, unless you're ER doctor and somebody's bleeding in front of you, everything actually has the right, there is the right time. There is enough time, and there's the right time. And we really need to learn how to slow down. It is okay. Would any one of us, how would you call if we make decision to turn left and right in a full speed with a dirty windshield? It is reckless. It's stupid. So we make a lot of decisions in our life with a with speeding and not thinking and not slowing down. Whatever helps you to slow down. I'm actually a type A. Like if everything can be done yesterday, it would be done yesterday. So how do I slow down? I mean, Hannah certainly taught me a lot. It is really spending time with him and having clients. It was Diane Langberg that was talking that she had a client that was coming for months in her office and she didn't say a word. And Diane Langberg chose to just sit with her and be quiet. And this is what Diane said. When was the last time I did that in presence with Christ? Even we bring hurry in our quiet times with a list of things that need to be done. So I even tell him, help me to slow down and to hear you. And oh my, didn't the world stop? The push button was pressed and we all witnessed. So if the world can stop, certainly we can. And yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know the pace that you are in and the importance, but I know that it is, I'm not keeping anybody alive. It is God. And sometimes he's using me help somebody not to hurt himself. But it's his work and the burden is much easier. So I don't know if that is really the answer. It is really the topic itself that needs to be addressed and shared, at least with, in the presence of Christ.
Yeah. You started off by talking about the causes of our souls going down, if you like, and you talked about sin and also the search for idols, and then shepherding oneself rather than caring for others, and so on. But you talked also about lies, the messages we listen to that we may have actually been listening to all our lives. What are some of the main messages, unhelpful messages, you think that Christians listen to that get them into trouble from your experience? What are the common ones, and how you combat those, recognize them and combat them?
Well, there are the different things that the messages we learn growing up, and that there are lies. There are the messages that we learn growing up in our family, growing up in the country, and what is shameful, what is obligation, what we should do. So they're like just the messages that we kind of carry. Just think of a big basket, and it just kind of put on your lap since you're a child. So when are you really secure? When are you really valued? When are you really loved? And like, for example, one of the things that I grew up with is that you need to be a good student. You are valued when you are successful, when you are a hard worker. So I remember just, I mean, as I said, Hannah's been my probably the biggest companion or teacher that God's been using in my life. So I remember Hannah was going through, she was really sick. I was helping her, and I just felt she cannot even tell me when she's hurting. So that was really hard. And I'm helping her, and she was vomiting, poor child, in the middle of the night. And I just remember feeling, I just love her for who she is. And that feeling that I just love that young girl. She's never going to come home with good grades or get married or learn how to read or write. And I just love her. She can just be. And maybe the deepest lie that the enemy serves everyone, every human being, so it's not just the believers, but it's every human being, is that you need to do something, be someone that you're going to be loved. But being loved just for who we are. And I'm not a better parent than he is. If I can love a child just because she is, I really felt God telling me, that's how I love you, Jelena. And it's what a pressure that, so and there are certain lies that we, being in ministry for a long time, it's, if we don't share the gospel, who's going to do it? They are going to go to hell if we don't do it. I love sharing the gospel, and I love talking about Jesus, because the way I love talking about my family and my kids, he is the part of my life. I don't have to be forced or manipulated to do that. He is my life. So I talk about him. But the things that we need to do, or need to be, so that we can be loved, so that we can be valued, so that we can be secured, so that we can be, sometimes they're really based on lies. So even in a ministry, that without us it cannot be done, that if we are, I mean, it says, let's read the Bible, let's see, or that he's not going to give us more than we can handle. That doesn't say in the Bible, because he is giving us very often more than we can handle, because he is not going to give us temptation more than we can handle, but not pain and suffering, because he wants him in our lives. So when Paul was dealing more than he can handle, God told him, because, I can't remember in English, my grace is sufficient and it's enough. So, I mean, there's just so much there to say, and I don't even know if I'm answering actually your questions, what you are asking me, if you are getting that answer. But certainly there, if you have, do we have more time, or you want to ask another question? Okay,
So,
go ahead. There was something about lies that was really helpful to me, but go ahead. Let's talk about something else.
so from Liette here, just saying that demands of some medical work are often difficult to diminish. The sense that the pressure is actually not being created by ourselves and our desire to work, but actually we're just being overwhelmed with need that is beyond our ability to cope with. And I think that's certainly been the experience of a lot of people within ICMDA during the COVID times, just overwhelmed with patients, not having enough equipment to look after them and so on. Any tips for dealing with that situation? Because we know Jesus was also, I mean, Paul talked about being overwhelmed, beyond his ability to cope and things. So when we're in those situations where it just seems impossible because of pressures on us, not created by us, but on us.
It's fine. I tell okay, so just think of a mom of twins, the little babies at home, and, she needs to prepare the meal, the babies are crying. So there is a valid pressure, and she is very important there. So sometimes when I tell people, when there are like a zillion things happening, my home is not a place where I rest. My home is the place where I care for my daughter for years and years and years. So when do I find, I rest when I take Hannah for a few hours somewhere, but very often I take her somewhere so I can go and work. So what do we do when there's everything, like when all the buttons are pushed around us? Find the way to buy time, even if it means you're going to the bathroom and you're just going to wash your face, even if it means you're not going to count till 10, even if it means you're going to just go and listen to one song on a balcony of the hospital and just be alone. Find way, even however simple that sounds, find ways to buy time. Because if you just buy, even if it's few minutes, you can think clearly when you go back to the chaos. And that's where you buy time to hear yourself and your thoughts. So sometimes I just go for a walk, or sometimes I go and wait in line in a post office alone. And I know this sounds terrible. And I love waiting in line when I'm alone and I'm not with Hannah. Nobody's screaming. The screaming child is not mine. And I listen to a lot of books, audio. I go for walks and sometimes just buy time. Just find those little pockets of time when I can breathe, think, and pray. I memorize scripture, even if it's a small verse, small few verses or a small psalm, and I repeat that. And I just find a huge comfort in Psalm 23, repeating it over and over, or Lord's Prayer, saying it. Just few minutes, to wash my face, to pray, or just to scream for help. But somebody says that Churchill loved, he was smoking these big cigars. He was buying time every time he would take, I'm not telling everybody to start smoking cigars, please. But it's just that he was buying time to think, so what he's going to answer, when he was being asked the question, it's just, so learn the ways to buy a few seconds in life, just to hear yourself. I mean, Jesus found a place to be alone, even if it's in the middle of the night, find time to listen to yourself and to Christ, hopefully.
Yes, and one of my favorite verses is in Luke 5, when it says, and people crowded around Jesus, but he often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. So, of course, you can't walk out of the emergency room in a cardiac arrest, but there are certainly lots of times when we can escape. Another question from Southeast Asia here, how do we care for our souls when we feel like our faith has run dry? And maybe some comments too about burnout, Jelena, because I know there are times when the warning signs are such that we really need to recognize that complete collapse might be around the corner, and we need to do something more radical about that.
It is. We are much better if somebody. Okay, so there are all these little red flags that we know, and we usually recognize in the others, not in ourselves. So even reading a book on leading on empty, it could be helpful, or Soul Care for Pablo Martinez, or even talking to someone that is a really good friend that knows us. It is very helpful because we're much better giving advice to, let's say, if what you are going through and what you're experiencing, your sister or your brother will experience, what would you tell them? Would you tell them this is not good? You need rest. And very often we don't need rest when we're all exhausted. We need to plan rest and plan time to slow down and to stop when we're well. That's when we actually make good decisions. In the morning, I'm going to make good decisions what I'm going to eat. But if I didn't eat all day long at 9 o'clock, chips is going to sound amazing. But in the morning at 9 o'clock, I'm going to make all these good decisions because I'm restful. I feel good. I'm not, exhausted and tired. So when we're well, we should make. And as the people around you, and it's kind of like, sequoia trees, we really need a healthy surrounding. And very often they're very tall trees, but their roots are not really deep because they support each other. Who is around you? Who can speak for you? Who can recognize where you are? Who's going to grab you by hand and say, this is not good? Have the people like that around you and listen to them. And ask for people to pray for you, to help you, to carry you, to love you, to advise you. We need each other.
Yeah. Now you've talked about the value of suffering and the way that God uses suffering to produce endurance and character and hope, as the scriptures tell us. And of course, we know Jesus learned obedience through what he suffered. But so suffering is an important part of life that God is sovereign over. But how do we tell the difference between the suffering that is, just God's plan for us on the one hand, and on the other hand, suffering that might be perhaps a little bit more self-induced by, either through sin or listening to lies or chasing idols or whatever? or are they just all the same? Your thoughts?
Ouch. Well, suffering is certainly actually, I'm not saying that suffering is good, but God can use suffering, and God can use suffering for his glory and for his redemptive work. Not all suffering is the 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 consequences of sin, because if it was, then Jesus was the greater sinner then. So, but of course there are many levels. Adam and Eve did what they did. We make poor choices and we suffer, and some suffering is kind of a suffering that is a mystery suffering, like Job's suffering. God can use every type of suffering to bring us closer to him. We can, through suffering, be better, or we can be sweeter. It depends. I don't even know how to say it. How do we make that decision? I will say yes, that we can make that decision. I mean, but I really believe that being honest and telling Jesus exactly what you're thinking, and being, speaking truth, really is very powerful and amazing. So we were going through a lot of things with our kids. And I mean, I don't know, I was the first one to have COVID in my church. So sometimes I wonder if the next thing I'm going to be sitting outside of the city, and scraping the boils of my body like Job. I mean, we went through a lot of things with all our children. And at one point, Hannah was the easiest. So that tells you how crazy can be in my household. And, but I remember actually, it was my husband. Well, he's a more patient man. And he said, do we want to pray right now? It's when we send our son to college and we find out that either he is having acute psychosis or he is using drugs. It was a few years ago. It was a mess. I mean, neither one of these two is a good news. So Greg said, do you want to pray? Let's pray right now. And of course I want to pray. And the prayer is a good solution. And I looked at my husband and I said, well, right now, if I pray, my thought will be, are you crazy, Jesus? What are you doing? So of course God already knows that. So if I'm thinking, I don't have to hide in my prayer. And I don't think God is crazy. And of course I cannot handle all of that. But being honest in his presence has helped me see him and experience him.
Yeah.
And so whatever brought the pain and suffering, and the pain and suffering in our life, if we choose to bring that and ask him for help to walk us through. I mean, there are the stability in the Bible that, Jesus openly said that is for God's glory. They are, in Exodus 4, he tells Moses, so who makes the man blind and deaf is an eye. I mean, it talks about some suffering that God brings in our life. I don't have to know the origin. I know that I want God to use everything, all the good and bad in my life, to bring me closer to him. And certainly suffering does, I guess, shatters my thoughts of how to fix the world, my life, or my children. It is all broken. And guess what? I'm desperate in need for him. And what a good place to be. So God can powerfully use suffering. And I've spoken on suffering a lot. And there are a lot of videos of me speaking on suffering, and how God can use that in our life for his glory and for his honor. I'm not saying that suffering is the greatest thing. No, it's not. It's horrible. But he can certainly use it for his honor and his glory.
Yeah, someone's just typed in the chat, again from Claudia Stein, true character and faith is built by trials, not by miracles. And sadly, we've just about run out of time. I do want to just ask you one more question, which is at the top of our list, from Jenny Ellis, who's a family doctor. How do we've talked a lot about soul care. That's incredibly relevant to doctors and dentists, of course, but also we're going to see a lot of people in the situation. And the question she's got is, how do we support and challenge leaders, and particularly Christian leaders, to care for their souls?
Well, this is one of the ways. I mean, talking about care, soul care. And also, I've spoke to a lot of leaders and telling them if they don't slow down, they're not going to helping the sheep. They're going to be hurting. If we don't take care of our soul, we're going to damage the others. And if we are not restful and well fed, we cannot feed, we cannot help others. So very often, I mean, we are all complicated. Not always that helps, but it does help sometimes. And it helps often when they see that they think that they cannot give up because there's a good work that need to be done. If you're not well, you're not doing the good work, you're hurting. and well, pray and see. And I'm not saying that very lightheartedly. And very often we say, when there's nothing left, let's pray. Actually, I think prayer is a powerful and amazing way to communicate and talk to God and that shapes us and the others. So ask Jesus how to approach someone.
Great. Well, that's a great line to finish on. And thank you so much, Jelena. We've been listening to Jelena Sivulka on caring for our souls today. So it just remains to me to say thanks again to you, Jelena. Thanks to Josh working his IT wizardry, to our 4 translators, and to all of you for joining us today on ICMBA webinars. God bless you and keep you and
Thank
care for
you.
your souls. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.